Hello, everyone. Welcome to this live stream. Thank you all so much for joining us from wherever you are in the world. We are so excited to have you here with us in this episode. So, this episode is actually part of an asset management series that I'm doing and collaborating with my dear colleague Someleze. We are here to kind of talk about all power apps, low code, no code, Power Automate, and all that stuff that you can do with Microsoft Power Platform, basically. How you can build solutions, automation processes, talk about workflows, about tables, about the dataverse, and everything really related on basically our topic is asset management series. This is the second episode of our asset management series that we've done. Last week, we've already built an asset management application with the Microsoft Power Apps. And today, in this kind of episode, we are going to talk to you all about how you can build an asset manager process using Power Automate. Thank you all so much for joining us. Please let us know in the comments where you are joining us from. My name is Hadeel Shubair, and I am based in Dubai, United Arab Emirates. And I'm very excited here to be joined with, as I mentioned, my awesome colleague Someleze Deco. Someleze, thank you so much for joining us. Please, I'm very excited to kind of continue this kind of series and talk all about how you can kind of take us through the process of how we can build an asset manager using Power Automate. So thank you so much again, Someleze, for joining us, and I'm so excited to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much, Hadil. I am happy to be here and to be continuing with the series. So hopefully everyone else would actually have learned something new within the series because we've covered two different things. The second one, which we'll cover today.
Yes, exactly. Awesome. So let's get right into it. So as you guys know, we have a Microsoft Reactor code of conduct. So obviously in these events that we have, we always want to make sure that this is kind of very respectful environment, be welcoming, be open to all questions and viewpoints. And most importantly, we're all here to learn. So kind of let's make it a friendly environment. Please feel free to ask and put in any kind of questions you have in the comments box. We will try to answer as many questions as possible and make this, a beautiful learning journey for each one of us. That being said, let's actually kind of introduce the audience to us. So for those of you who don't know, my name is Hadeel Shubair. I am a regional cloud advocate and data analytics engineer at Microsoft Reactor for Middle East and Africa. I am based in Dubai, the United Arab Emirates, and part of what I do as a regional cloud advocate is I love and I'm very passionate about sharing my knowledge in the tech industry with the tech community, and specifically my areas of expertise or the areas I'm very interested in are like around data science, data analytics, machine learning, AI, as well as exploring other topics that are, always so popular out there, such as low code and no code, like what we're doing today with Someleze, and Internet of Things, and many other kind of talking about Microsoft platforms and tools and all that stuff. So I'm very kind of passionate about sharing my knowledge with the community, about connecting and growing with the community that we have. If you would like to kind of stay in touch with all my updated events or what I am up to, the best way to find me is to connect with me on Twitter, which is my Twitter handle is right on the screen at @Shubair3, and LinkedIn is my name, Hadeel Shubair. Feel free to connect, and I'm very excited to kind of grow my community and all that stuff. That being said, obviously we have our special guest on our show, Someleze Deco. I will hand you the mic to kind of give us an intro about yourself and tell us where you're based and all about your expertise areas, because I hear obviously that, and I know that you are an expert in the Power Platform. So tell us all about that and, give the audience a bit about who you are.
Thank you so much, Hadil. So, for those who don't really know us yet, as Hadil has already introduced herself, we already did this introduction in the last session. So, my name is Somele Zadigo, and I am a cloud advocate at Microsoft, and I am based out in South Africa. So, just like Hadil had mentioned earlier on, just make sure that you actually let us know where you're joining from, because this is a live stream. So, anything and everything that comes with interactions would actually appreciate it, and make sure that you reach out to us and just let us know that you where are you actually joining from. I actually love building solutions with the Power Platform, Teams, and Microsoft Azure. And obviously, just like I mentioned earlier on, I've also gained the knowledge or the skill of using Microsoft Graph within the Power Platform space. So a few of those technologies, obviously, that's on the screen is something that I really like using, and I'm always open to learn more about this different kinds of technologies that we have and building solutions around it. And I'm pretty sure that everyone else also enjoys building solutions using the technology at their disposal. So with that, you can be able to connect with myself within Twitter or LinkedIn, so that you can be able to share what you're learning with me and all of those things. So you can connect with me on Twitter using the handle that you see on the screen, which is at Digo Someleze, and also on LinkedIn using Someleze Digo. So basically, this slide title, which is Someleze Digo, you just reach out to me on LinkedIn, and then we can share and learn from each other. So just make sure that you reach out and share your knowledge, share everything that you're actually learning, and share the projects that you're actually doing, even the ones that we are doing within this asset manager series, because I would actually like to know what you guys are getting up to and how is the experience. Right. Without further ado, we actually have to get into what we are in about today, which is the asset management series. If you do not know what the asset management series is all about, it's actually about a specific scenario that is centered around asset management or hardware refresh cycle within organizations that employees have to go through every 3 years. So we are trying to automate that solution or automate that process using Power Platform. And within this series, actually, you'll be able to learn how to build a connected solution with Power Apps and Power Automate. You're working on this project to showcase this new learning. So you're not learning just the basics of Power Apps and then you just leave, or learn the basics of Power Automate and then you just leave it at that. You're actually building something out of this specific series. And this project that you're going to be building is leveraging Power Apps and Power Automate. Again, just to mention, on the first session, which was on the December 12th, we built an asset management app using Microsoft Power Apps. And today, which is December 16th, we are automating the asset management process using Power Automate. So, really, how are you doing this, and what are we actually using? So, for those who are new to the specific series, we are actually using the Microsoft Power Platform, and we're using two of the products within the Power Platform. So with Power Apps, you can actually use Power Apps to build mobile applications or applications development. Power Automate is workflow automation. So if you want to automate the background processes or business processes you have within your organization or your company, then obviously Power BI, you can actually use it to do your business analytics around your data that you're collecting from your app. And then on top of that, we also have Power Virtual Agents that actually is centered around building intelligent virtual agents or chatbots. So in this case, you can actually build chatbots without writing any code. And then also we are using within the Power Platform, we are using Power Pages, and it is centered around web application development, which is something that people are actually into. So if you learn about web application development, but you don't necessarily have the background or the programming background to actually get into it, you can actually use the Microsoft Power Platform with Power Pages to build those solutions. So, with that, what exactly is all of these products sitting on top of. They're actually sitting on top of your your business data platform, which is Dataverse, where you can actually be able to store all of your information in your data source using Dataverse and all of those things. And there's different kinds of moving parts within Dataverse that you can actually learn about, which we actually covered on our last session as part of the back end for our solution. So basically, that's what the Microsoft Power Platform is about. It's a low code, no code, and also code first platform that people can actually use to build solutions or extend their solution. Right. Okay, we're on episode two. The first episode was just building the interface and just looking at the scenario there. Within this specific episode today, we are looking at another scenario for the very same asset management series, right? So we are building an asset manager process using Power Automate. So what we look at is that the Asset Manager app allows employees to capture and check out the devices that they need to replace um, for their old ones, and also for the organization to be able to properly control this. Managers need to approve the checked out devices, which then sits with the finance department and the IT department. So an approval process can be built using Power Automate to send an approval request to the necessary stakeholders. So in this case, it would be the manager or also the IT department or the finance department. So in our series, we're just looking at the base level, which is the manager. So how can we actually best build a solution for that scenario? We can actually build an automated cloud flow to notify the employee's manager about the request and start the approval process if the amount of the request is above a specific amount. So we touched this a little bit within our first episode, but you actually see it in action today. And there is the very same thing that I always tell people when it comes to building applications is that you need to look at the different kinds of components that you are going to be using within your solution or your application. So you need to look at the front end, which is what the users are going to be interacting with. And in our case, we already built the front end using Power Apps on our first session. And then you need to look at the middleware, which is automating the business processes at the back end. For an example, the approval process that we are going to be building today. So we are focusing on the middleware. And then the back end, obviously, this is where our data is going to be stored. And we already built our back end, which was a Dataverse table that we built on our first session using Dataverse. Right. So these are the three things that a person or a developer would actually need to look at, even if you're a citizen developer and you don't have a programming background. When you're using the Power Platform to build those solutions, make sure that you look at these three different components to help better understand how the flow of your solution would look like. Right. Let's focus on the middleware, which is something that we're going to be building today. We are using Power Automate again to actually build this middleware and this approval processes. And in this case, you can actually see on the screen, there's an image there that shows when a file is created within SharePoint. You can get my profile, you create an approval for that specific item, and then obviously it'll run that approval process in the back end and all of those things that come into play, right? And now you must be wondering, as much as we are going to be building the middleware, what is Power Automate really? So within Power Automate, you can be able to automate and integrate business processes with the Power Automate technology or product. You can be able to first model business processes and automate workflows and your apps and services. And you can deep and broad from it can be deep and broad from simple individual automation to advanced organization scenarios with branches, loops, and more. So I just said loops, so probably professional developers are also intrigued around that because they use loops within their specific programming languages and all of those things. And within Power Automate, you have trigger actions, grant approvals, and get notifications right where you work. So in this case, if I have a trigger action and I just want to trigger a Power Automate flow to send me a notification on a daily basis, I can build that using Power Automate and have my trigger action and also have obviously my actions that will come into play. As much as that still sounds a little bit of a vague or fuzzy information for you, you actually get to see this in action when we actually get into building this specific approval or specific middleware process that we're going to have for our asset manager series. Right. But before we can do that, to avoid any confusion when we are doing this specific middleware building with Power Automate, this is something that I like to employ when we are building solutions or processes within Power Automate, which is you need to understand the backend process. So that means how the different stakeholders within your solution are going to be interacting with each other or with the system that you have built. So let's look at this. Let's look at the user first. Upon submission, right, the user needs to get an acknowledgement in email saying that, for an example, their request has been submitted or their request either has been rejected or approved. And then the system then needs to look at, once the new request is submitted, it needs to check if the request amount is below a certain amount and then notify the manager. The reason is because if it's below a certain amount, it'll either automatically approve that specific request, and then obviously notify the manager that this specific employee has actually requested for this device. And then if it's above a certain amount, then obviously another process needs to come in play. So you can see again, when that happens within the system, which is checking if the request amount is below a certain amount and then notify the manager, the system would then automatically approve the request and update the request status to that specific status. Right. And then after it automatically approves the request and updates that request status, obviously the user needs to receive a notification with the approved request. So once it's been approved, I need to get a notification that I am getting my new device. Once it's been rejected, I need to get a notification that I am not getting my new device that I actually requested. And then now, if it happens that the system checks that the request is actually above a certain amount in this case, then the system needs to start an approval process to the manager so that the manager can approve or reject. So let's say, for an example, I have submitted a request and it's below 14,000, then the system will automatically approve that request and then send me that notification that has been approved. But if it's above 14,000, then it needs to send it to my manager so that my manager can be able to action that specific request and then approve it or reject it. So how does that happen? The system will then send the approval request to the manager. And then once the approval process is started, the manager must get that notification to action the approval process, either to reject or approve. And once the manager approves or rejects the request, the user must be notified, meaning that the system would update the request status and then notifies the user. So you can see, even with this process, it says if the request is above a certain amount within the system, it sends the action or the approval request to the manager. And once the manager has approved that specific request, it will then send it back to the system to update the request status saying that it's approved or rejected, and then it will notify the user so that I can know whether I'm getting that new device or not. Right, so that's basically the backend process. You need to understand how the flow of the process works whenever you're building the solutions. I understand when someone is just starting out with Power Automate, they would just say, okay, maybe I'm just learning X, or I'm learning that, or this action, or this trigger. But if you're building an entire solution and you are also incorporating Power Automate into it, you need to understand the backend processes that are actually happening within your specific solution. Right. So to actually see this in play, we will then need to go and build the process. Hadil, at this point, do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, actually, I wanted to kind of, just touch on one thing. So it's very important. What I've realized is, when you build an application for both, in Power Apps or in Power Automate, it kind of has the same flow, right? You have the front end, the middleware, and the back end. So it's very important, as someone who is getting started, or even like a professional or a developer, you need to kind of understand the flow of how things actually work, obviously backstage, just to kind of once you build your solution and get into the demonstration, as you're going to show us in a bit. So Melissa, it's very important to kind of understand how things actually work, so it will kind of make sense to you. And what I love about Power Automate, Somalis, and kind of, the best way I can think about it is, for the audience, or if you have like absolute beginners here or people who don't know about Power Automate, is it's basically just like its name, it's all about automation. So basically, like Somalis, we can just think about like how the time is saved once like you automate repetitive, let's say, manual tasks simply by, let's say, recording mouse clicks, keystrokes, or even copy paste steps from your desktop. So anything that's really, done quickly, manually, and such can be done using Power Automate. That being said, I actually have a question to you before we get right into our demo, Somalize. So let's say as a professional developer yourself, is the Power Platform or Power Automate like a technology that I can use, someone who comes out from, a different, let's say, data science background, or from whatever that background I come from? If so, like, what are the options that are available, and what skills do I kind of need to have to get to start building solutions using Power Automate?
Yeah, that is actually a great question, Hadil. If you are a person from a background that has programming or computer science background, in this case, you can actually be able to build solutions using the Power Platform. So normally, you don't necessarily would need to have a specific skill because it's similar to people who do not have a programming background. They don't need to have a specific skill to actually come into the Power Automate space, but they need to understand how Power Automate works, and then they can start building those solutions. And I guess the only skill that I can actually say that they would need to have is to actually be able to break down whatever solution that they're trying to build into tiny bits that they can be able to understand, and then obviously understand the process or the flow of that solution and how it can actually work before building it. And for professional developers that are looking into get into Power Automate or the Power Platform space, but they are just telling themselves that it's just a low code, no code platform, there's actually something that we call there's fusion development within the space where professional developers can be able to bring in their programming skills or their computer science background skills onto the Power Platform to build solutions that actually utilizes those skills. So just because it's a low code, no code platform doesn't mean that they are not able to use their programming or their computer science background skills that they've attained in the past.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lizzie, for kind of, taking us through. So basically, just to answer that question is anyone from a basic, business, let's say, user to an IT professional can create automated processes using Power Automate, low code and no code platform. So that being said, I think, Somaleze, I don't have any more questions. I would love to kind of see how actually things work with this, episode, how we can actually, how you can actually kind of take us through how we can automate the asset management process using Power Automate. So tell us all about Power Automate platform and all that stuff. I would love to take us through the demo. And please, for the audience, if you have any questions, feel free to obviously share them in the comments. We would love to kind of answer them at any point or at any stage we have and help you in this learning journey. So, Melise, on to you.
Yeah, thanks, Adil. So, when you want to automate your process using Power Automate, you can go on make.powerautomate.com. If you have a subscription for the Power Platform, or if you're using a developer account, an M365 developer account that you can set up, and then you can go on make.powerautomate.com, and then you'd be met with the homepage of Power Automate, of course, where you can see all the different things that are available to you. So, for an example, in terms of what you want to automate, or you're just starting out and you want to learn the stuff that are within Power Automate, you are met with the different templates that you can actually use. So, for an example, this is the first automation that you can use, which is save outlook.com email attachments to your OneDrive, or you can save your Gmail attachments to your Google Drive, or notify yourself on Teams when you receive an email with negative sentiment. So this uses sentiment analysis. So again, you can still use your professional developer skills, whether you have AI skills or machine learning skills, you can put them into use within the Power Platform and within Power Automate and so forth. So there's different templates that are available to you. There are other ones for files and documents, notifications, and reminders. So when you scroll down, similar to Power Apps, you also have some learning materials that is available for you to be able to use. So if you want to automate a business process using Power Automate. So this is I guess, a learning path that is available within Microsoft Learn that you can actually use. And then if you want to automate a process with robotic processes, so this is more of an intermediate kind of knowledge. So if you've already gone through the beginner content, you can go to the intermediate kind of um, content. And then also there's other content for beginners. So don't worry and say, I'm seeing only intermediate content. I can't really start learning about Power Automate since I don't have any background around Power Automate. There's a lot of resources and content available for you to actually use. So there's a lot more which would then take you to Microsoft Learn. And then obviously for businesses, they can actually explore more in terms of the pricing and how the pricing works within Power Automate to get that subscription. And then on how to actually build your solutions within Power Automate, you can watch videos and you can find community forums that would actually help you understand if you have a problem or you want to ask questions. And then there's documentations as well. Right. I want us to actually focus on the left hand side of the screen, which is you can see there's home, there's approvals, there's my flows, there's create, and there's templates. And like I mentioned earlier on, there's templates that you can use to actually automate your processes. And similar to what I said about standard tables and custom tables within Dataverse, it actually applies within Power Automate too, where if you find a template that already meets your business requirement, then you can actually use that template. But if it doesn't meet your business requirement, you can build your Power Automate flow from scratch, which is something that we're going to do. Right, so let's get started. For us to create a Power Automate flow, you can click on Create, and then it will actually give you the 3 ways to actually make a flow. Well, 4 ways or 5 ways to actually start building your Power Automate flow. In this case, you can actually click on automated cloud flow. There's different kinds of flows that you can build within Power Automate. So this kind of flows that you actually build is that there's an automated cloud flow where you have an automated trigger. So if something happens on your Outlook email, if you receive an email, then you want your Power Automate flow to be triggered, and then you want it to do a specific thing. And then an instant cloud flow is when your flow is manually triggered, so you have to press on a button for your flow to actually run. A scheduled cloud flow is when you want your flow to actually run on a specific time interval, whether you want it to run today at a specific time or tomorrow at a specific time or next week at a specific time. So you can run your flow either weekly, monthly, or daily. And then there's desktop flows and process advisors. And then in our case, we are not going to be using the other 4 types of flows. We're going to be using an automated cloud flow. The reason is because we have a Dataverse table that actually stores the information that we get from our Power App, and then we want to leverage that specific information from the Power App within Dataverse, and we want a Power Automate flow to always run whenever there is a new request that is being submitted. If you remember back to what I showed you with the backend process and we're trying to understand, is that whenever a user submits a request, then the system does a specific action. So how do we set that up? We set that up with automated cloud flows. So we click on automated cloud flow. Then first we give our flow a name. So here we're gonna say we're gonna give it the same name as our session. So asset manager process, and then you can search for your flows trigger. So in this case, when you want to specify the trigger for your flow, you can choose from the different kinds of triggers that are available. There's a Microsoft Forms trigger, there's also a SharePoint trigger, and there's also OneDrive and Planner and Gmail. In our case, we actually want it to run on a Dataverse trigger. So we can search for Dataverse, and then we'll choose the second option, which is when a row is added, modified, or deleted, because we want to run our Power Automate flow whenever there's new information or new request that is being submitted onto our table, right? So we'll choose that, and then we're gonna click on Create. So what that does really, it actually looks at, Do we have a new record that's being added within the table? Yes. Okay, run this specific Power Automate flow. So it triggers that flow. So we need to specify three things. We need to specify the change type, whether it's added, modified, or deleted. We need to specify the table name where we are looking at for our information that is being submitted on that table, and then the scope. So for change type, we are going to choose edit because when a new request is being submitted, it's being added onto the table. And then we need to choose the table. So you have all the different tables available to you. The standard tables that we spoke about on our previous session also show up here, but we are looking for the name of our table that we actually built, which is a custom table that we built on our first session, which is called Asset Managers. So you can also search for the table name. And then the scope. This scope would actually mimic the scope that you chose when you were building your custom table. So you remember when we built our custom table, I specified to be organization in terms of record ownership to be organization instead of user or team. If I had chosen user or team, the option that was going to be available to me for scope would be user or team instead of organization. So you click on organization, and then you have set up your specific trigger. Now you need to add actions within that specific Power Automate flow. Because if you just trigger it, it's not going to do anything if you don't have actions. So we have the trigger. Now we need actions that we need to tell the Power Automate flow to do. So we're going to click on New Step. The first thing that we are going to do is to actually try to download the image that is also being submitted onto our Power App, and then is being saved onto our Dataverse table. Why are we doing this really? Because we do not want our system a to automatically approve a request, whereas maybe someone did something fraudulent. So in this case, where they say their laptops is actually under 14,000, but it actually isn't. And then they just submit because they're not going to submit any proof of that specific receipt or specific purchase. So we want to enforce that they need to submit the proof of payment or proof of receipt and all of those things, so that whenever there's auditing within the organization, we can look at all the different kinds of receipts or invoices that we have. So to do that, because we did not enforce it within our Power App where we said the image is compulsory or required, we can do it within Power Automate. So you can also do it on the Power App, but I chose to do it on Power Automate so that I can show you how you can be able to set up different processes here. So how can we do that? We first need to get the image that is submitted onto the table. If there is an image, if there isn't an image, then we know that our Power Automate flow will reject that. So how do we do that? We search for Dataverse again, because obviously Dataverse is the data source that we're using. And then there's different actions that are available within Dataverse. So you have relayed rows, update row, upload a image or upload a file or an image, which is not what we want, list rows, which will then list all of the rows within the table, perform an unbound action, download a file or image. So this is what we need, which is we're going to click on it and say download a file and image. Then we need to specify the table, the row ID, and the column. So for the table, you already know which table we are using, which is asset managers. And then for the row ID, here comes the tricky part. How are you going to know which row it is? It's not really that tricky, because whenever a row is added or modified or deleted, this is where we're going to get our actual specific row ID. So if you click on row ID or the text box for row ID, it would then open dynamic content on the right-hand side of the screen, which is like a dialog box. And then you'll see all of the different columns that are available within your specific table that you are using. So you have device brand, you have status reason, device cost, exchange rate, device name, asset manager. So asset manager is actually the unique identifier for that specific role within your table. So this is where we're going to use it. There's different ways to do this. You can choose asset manager as your role ID or your unique identifier, or you can do or use your programming skills, which is something I'll probably show you a little bit later within the session, to actually get the actual internal ID of that role. So we're gonna just use asset managers to keep things simple, because that is the unique identifier. Even on the table, when you look at it, it actually says unique identifier. And then we want to look at a specific column. So that column that houses our image or file, it's image upload. That's the name of the column that we're working with. Right. We have everything. So everything's good, right? No, not everything's good. We need to add more steps within our Power Automate flow, because we need to go through that process that I explained earlier on. Right. Because we want to send a approval or an approval process request to the manager of that specific employee, how can we actually do that? Because currently we just took the employee's name or the requester's name, and then we took the requester's um, email, and that's it. We did not ask the requester to fill in the manager's email. So how can we do that? So we're going to add another new step, and then we use in this case we're going to use a different connector, or a different action, which is Office 365, because the user within our environment or our tenant is also has an Office 365 account. So if we use Office 365 users, we'll be able to get an action that will allow us to pull that user's or that employee's manager. So you can even see the actions that are available here. They'll send an HTTP request, get direct reports, and also get manager, which is something that we actually want to use. So we're going to click on get manager v2, and then it will ask us for a user principal name or ID. Normally, the user principal name within Office 365 or within the specific tenant also correlates to that specific user's email. So, because we already have the email and we asked the user to actually input, or not really input their specific email, but we do take the email from the application, we can then actually pull it within our Power Automate flow from Dataverse. So we're going to go to the dynamic content and search for requester email, and then the requester email would actually be the user principal name or ID for this. And then it will actually get the manager for this specific requester, for this specific employee. Right, we're done. We've already set up the stuff that we're going to need for the next steps within our specific flow. Now let's get into the actual process that we are going to do. Right, the first part is for the system to check if that specific request is below a certain amount. So how do you do that? It's a condition itself. So within Power Automate, you can find conditions. So you click on control, and then there's different controls or actions that you can use. There's apply to each, do until, a scope, a switch, or a terminate control. But in this case, we want to use a condition. So we click on condition. We need to specify the condition of our Power Automate flow or of this request, right? We want to check if the cost of that request is actually above or below a certain amount. So instead of using the get manager v2 dynamic content, we want to use the dynamic content that comes from our trigger, because that is the new record that is being added. That is the new request that we're actually getting. So we're going to search for cost, which is device cost. So we need to choose device cost and not device cost, which is base, because this is just showing the base currency of that specific amount. So we just need to get the value, which is device cost. Right. So device cost is equal to, right? We want to check if device cost is either equal to a specific amount, is not equal to a specific amount, is greater than a specific amount, is greater than or equal to a specific amount, is less than a specific amount, is less than or equal to a specific amount, right? So we're going to use is less than or equal to a specific amount that we're going to put. So in my case, I just use 14,000. So we want to check if the cost of that specific request or specific device that is being requested is less than or equal to 14,000. If it is less than or equal to 14,000, we want our system to automatically approve. We want our system to automatically approve that request instead of sending the approval request to the manager because, let's say, hypothetically speaking, it's not that expensive, right? So if it is less than or equal to 14,000, then we need an action on the EFS, right? So we add an action, right? We need to add an action on the EFS control. In this case, if it is less than or equal to 14,000, it needs to automatically approve it. But before it can automatically approve it, we need to have proof of receipts or invoices or proof of payment or whatever that the user needs to specify within the application so that it can be able to approve it because we have proof and we can do auditing at a later stage within the organization. But if that proof is not provided by the employee, then it needs to reject it and then obviously instruct that specific employee that they need to take action or add in that specific proof of payment or proof of receipt. So how they can actually do that, we will then again specify another condition because this is a condition to check if that the user or employee has actually specified or has also specified that they have the proof of payment or proof of invoice. So we're going to use another condition again. And then condition two, choose a value. What do we want to choose? So we want to choose dynamic content that is not from the get manager action, but that is coming from the download a file or an image. So we want to download the file or image that comes from this record from our trigger, right? If there is a file or image, then it needs to do specific actions. So how can we do that? We search for the dynamic content, or you can just scroll down towards the bottom, and then you can see that the name of the action, which is download a file or an image, it actually has dynamic content, which is file or image content. So you're going to choose that. And then in this case, you want to actually look at if it's equal to null, meaning that there is no image content or there is no file. So you're going to leave this part of the condition as is, which is equal to, and then you're going to go and then search instead of saying is equal to 0 or instead of writing it or typing it out and say it's equal to null and typing it out here. Within Power Automate, there's different expressions that you can actually use, and most of them, the string functions that you can use, which is concatenate, there's collections, and all of those things. But for our friend here, which is null, to check if that image content is null or that specific array is null, for an example, then you need to use the null expression or the null function within Power Automate instead of typing it out. And then once you type it out here, you click on OK, and then it changes to a formula or to a function instead of it being typed out. If you left it as typed out, it was going to give you an error or it was going to complain to you, and then you're going to be confused on what to do because it doesn't necessarily recognize your null that you typed out as a function that Power Automate actually uses. Right. Okay. So if the file content is equal to null, so that means there is no invoice provided by the employee, then do what? Reject the specific request that we have. So firstly, before you reject it or before you send the notification to the user, you need to reject it and update the approval status or the request status within your Dataverse table. So we go back to Dataverse, we search for Dataverse within the data sources or data connectors that we can use. And then because we need to update the request status within this specific record that we submitted or the employee submitted using the Power App, we will then need to choose the update a row action within the Dataverse connector. Then you click on update a row. You need to choose again, you need to choose the table name, which is the table name, asset managers. you specify the role ID. You specify the role ID again. So you go to the dynamic content and then you search for asset manager because I want to keep things simple. You can use asset manager as your unique identifier. And then we are not updating the device brand, the device cost, and all of those things. So we click on advanced options. We go to request status because whenever the new request is being submitted, that field or that column is always empty. So we're gonna say rejected. So we can type it out because we made our specific column to be a text. That's the reason why I made it text the other time when we were setting up our table. Or if you are using choice columns, obviously you are going to choose one of the options that were going to be available to you. So we're going to make it the request status to be rejected. And then once we've updated the row and updated the request status, we then notify that specific employee and tell them that their action or their request has been rejected. How do we do that? We send them an email. So you search for email, you choose whichever email client that you want to use. I'm going to use Office 365 Outlook, and then I am going to choose send an email v2 because I want to send an email to the user or to that specific employee. But now, Someleze, there's a problem. We can't find that specific requester on the suggested people because obviously we don't want to hard code that specific person's email here because if we did, each time every other employee was submitting a request and it was rejected, it was just going to update that one employee and not the person who actually submitted the request. So how can you actually avoid that? You can then click on add dynamic content, and then you can see there's requester email that comes from update a row. There's also requester email that comes from our trigger. So normally you can either choose to use the one that's coming from the update a row. They will be both the same email, or you can choose the one that comes from the trigger. So normally I work with the trigger in my most cases. So I'm going to choose the requester email from the trigger, and then the subject is going to be asset request for, and then I'll specify the device, the device brand and name if I wanted to, or I can say the device name only. So I'm just gonna say asset request for device name to specify as a subject, and then on my body, I'm gonna say hi, then call out the user by their name or the employee by their name. I'm just gonna say requester full name, and then on a new line, I'm gonna say your asset request for, and then again specify the device name within the body. So I'm going to choose from dynamic content for device name has been. So I'm going to say has been, and then I'm going to specify the request status. Now you need to mind that the request status is not coming from the trigger, it's going to come from the updated row. So the request status, which has been rejected, the one that we just rejected on the previous action, and then you say has been rejected, and then you're going to say here at the bottom, we're going to make it to say rejection reasons, or let's say reason to be, and then you're going to say there was, because this is being automatically rejected by the system. So you're gonna say there was no proof of payment or receipt attached, right? And then you can just make this one bold here. You make it bold. Choose at the top, and then on the new line, take action. So you want the employee to know which action to take, and then you let them know, please attach a receipt. right? And then you also make this bold so that the email looks a little bit much more nicer to the eye to actually read, right? Okay, that's it. That's how you have it for whenever there's no receipt attached, and then the system automatically rejects that specific request. And then if there is a file attached, or if there is a specific invoice attached, then you will do the same thing, but now you are changing the status to be, in this case, you can say you're changing the status to be approved. So we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to copy this action to my clipboard and add an action on the if no side of my condition. And then I click on my clipboard, and then I choose update a row. Hopefully it picks it up. It does not want to. Then I am just gonna quickly edit again and say dataverse, update a row. You specify the table name, and then you search for it, which is asset managers. And then you specify the row ID. Again, same steps as the ones that we did just now. And then you say asset manager, and then you say show advanced options. You go to the request status and you say approved, and then you collapse your update a row action, the second one. And then you want to send an email to the employee again. So you're gonna search for send email, and then you're gonna see the actions available to you. So I'm gonna choose send an email V2, and then again, add dynamic content, and then I'll choose request an email from the trigger. The subject is, I am just gonna quickly copy this in this and just put it here, request for, then I say device, say device name, and then I do the same thing for the body, and I say hi, and I call the user by their name, request a full name, new line, then I say your asset request, request for, then again, device name from the trigger, device name has been, then request status that is actually coming from the update row, the one above, request status. So we let them know that it's been approved or not. And then they don't need to take any action. So we're not going to specify the reason why it's been rejected, or specify the reason why it has been approved, or what actions they need to take. So in this case, it's just been approved, and that's it. You can leave it at that, right? So you have your condition when it's less than or equal to 14,000, and then you can collapse your condition here, and they've attached their receipt. So now in a case where it's greater than that 14,000, what do you want to do? You want to start an approval process for that. So you're going to add an action here, and you're going to search for approval, right, on the if no. So if the device cost is less than or equal to 14,000, right? So if no, if it's not less than 14,000 and is not equal to 14,000, but it's above, then start an approval request. So you're going to choose start and wait for an approval. And then on this side, you choose the approval type. So in this case, my personal favorite is everyone must approve, or first to respond, and all of those things. So in my case, I normally choose first to respond. And then this gives us other options to specify the title of the approval, who is it assigned to, the details if you want to add details, the item link, or the item link description. So in this case, the title would be similar to those specific subject lines on those emails. So I'm gonna say asset request for And then in this case, I'll need to specify the name of the employee that actually requested it. So I'll say asset request for the device name. So I'm just going to put it like that, device name, and then I'm going to say, so I'll show advanced options obviously there. So I'm going to say who's it assigned to. Now, because we got the manager's profile and we got the manager's email and all of those things, all of the details that we need from the specific action, we can actually use them. So here there's different options. So if I scroll to the side, there's different options. There's about me, birthday, and all of those things. Here you find mail. So I'm just going to put mail. So it's assigned to that manager. So it will send the email to that specific manager. And then you can add the details if you wanted to. You can add the requester's email, generating the request. So again, we can also say requester email, and you can provide it there. Maybe it'll put them on CC, which is something that you're probably gonna see and in this specific request. Right, on the details, I can actually put and say employee, then I search for their name, which is requester full name, has requested, and then you say device name, and then has requested the device name, which costs, and then you add the device cost, right? Start and wait for an approval, and then that's it, right? You started and waited for the approval, and then you collapse that approval action. That's all you need to do. And then you add another action to actually notify now the employee that it's been approved by their manager now in this case. So you're going to say send an email. So you send an email, and then you choose send an email v2, and then you specify again the email address. You add the dynamic content, and you choose request an email, and then you say asset request for the subject, asset request for, and then you specify the device name, and then you come here and you say hi. You call the requester again by their full name, hi, and you say your request for, specify the device name, and then you say has been, right? Has been. Now, in this case, we are using the previous action, which is start and wait for an approval. So once the manager responds on that specific approval request, then that's when we actually get the status from that specific request. So in this case, now has been, so either you choose response summary, which is summary of the responses, the outcome of the approval ID, the title, but those are not the things that we actually want. We want the responses approver response. So we want the response from the manager. We want to see if the manager has approved or has rejected that response. So you're going to choose responses approver response. And then obviously, if there's more than one approval request, then it will put an apply to each, and then it will loop through all of those responses. And then you see it says approvals, responses, response. And then you come here, you say reason, again, similar to what we did earlier on, reason. And then this is where we actually say responses, because we want to add the manager's comments. We have comments that come from the manager on that approval request. So responses, comments, and then take action, which is in this case, again, we can put the responses comments, which the manager will specify what the employee needs to do, or we can hard code it there. So in this case, I'm just going to leave it out and just put it away, and then just make this one bold so that the email looks much more nicer than it really is. Then let's save our flow and then look at it and run it from our Power App. So hopefully that is a bit clear for you guys to actually see how to build an approval request and all of those things within Power Automate. So I'm just going to collapse my conditions, and then you can see that from surface level, it looks like it only has 4 actions, but when you expand the last condition there, it looks like it has a lot, right? Okay, let's go to Power Apps on the application itself. So quickly, what we are going to do is to add a new item from the app that we built. We add a new item. The device name, I'm going to make it Aspire uh, 13. And then the brand will be ASA. The device cost, I'll make it above first so that we can actually see if it does send the approval request. Then I'll attach an image. So I'll attach an image here, and then I'm going to submit our request. And then while I'm submitting that request in the background, it will then try to kickstart the Power Automate flow in the background, and then we can actually see the approval process happening in the background and all of those things. Right. So in this case, this is how the app currently looks like. And obviously, I added in the image upload portion of the application. Again, just one column, one data card that you guys needed to add from our last session. So you don't need to say, "Oh no, this is new. We didn't see this on our first session." So you just need to add it in on your own. And then the Power Automate flow is running in the background. You can see on the run history, if we go back to Power Automate, it's running and it's actually waiting. So if I click on that run, it will say the flow is actually running right in the background, and it's currently stuck on start and wait for an approval. So if I switch to a different browser window, this is the manager, right? And this is a data card that is sent by Power Automate to the manager. So it says requested by, it specifies who requested this specific thing. And then it says that message that we wrote on our details. It says, hopefully you can guys see this. Let me zoom in a little bit. It says employee, my name, which is Someleza Digo, has requested the device name, which cost 15,000, which is above the threshold. Then the manager can approve or reject. So I'm going to click on approve, add comments, and I say looks good. Then I click on submit. That actually approves the specific approval request. Then it needs to email me, which I don't have my Power Automate or my Outlook open to actually show you the email that was sent, which we can just quickly look at it just now. Then we go on Outlook, but you can see on Power Automate, it says the flow ran successfully, and you can see on the apply to each, it actually sent the email to my email, right? So I'll switch back to Power Automate and to the user that actually submitted the request. So if I go to Outlook, and you can see here, which is at this time, hi, Someleza Digo, your request for Aspire 13 has been approved. So when you are using the start and await approval actions within Power Automate, it doesn't say approved or rejected, it says approve. And then it says looks good, right? And then that means our Power Automate flow is running properly on the manager's side if the amount is actually greater than a specific amount. And then the last part would be where you guys come in and you do your own Power Automate flow for this process, where you actually then do what we did for the other actions to update the row within our Dataverse table to specify that this request has been approved or rejected. So I didn't add it in on purpose so that you guys can be able to do it as part of your homework. Now, the last thing to do is to make another request again. So in this case, this is when um, we're gonna make the request to be less than 14,000. And then in this case, I'm not gonna add an invoice. I'm not gonna add any kind of receipt or proof of payment. I'm just gonna submit it as it is, and then it will go through and it will run the Power Automate flow in the background, and you give it a few minutes or a few seconds. It runs successfully. It sends me an email because I'm the requester. Sends me an email, and then it tells me again. It says, "Hi, Someleza Digo. Your request, your asset request for the Zen book, which the one that I just submitted now, has been rejected." And then the reason says there was no proof of payment or receipt attached. Please attach a receipt, and then I can submit it again when I have actually attached a specific receipt or invoice for that specific request. So ideally, basically, that's how you can actually set up that whole backend process for your Power Automate flow and how it can actually work. And even with your Power app, the other homework that I have for you guys is to set up a home screen that looks like this or something similar to this. So you'll have a home screen that has three buttons: admin, request, or exit. So if you click on requests, it will take you to this screen where you can submit your request and you provide your proof of payment, or you don't provide your proof of payment. If you provide your proof of payment, your Power Automate flow will automatically approve your request, and then if you didn't, it will automatically reject it, just like how I just showed you. And then if it's above a specific amount, it will then send it to your manager, and then the manager would action it. So if it's above an amount, a certain amount, you can action it. Ideally, that is basically how it actually looks like within Power Automate. And that's just basically how you can build that process within Power Automate, and you can set up all those approvals, the automatic approvals, and also the approvals that actually require user interaction.
Thank you, Someleze, for the absolutely wonderful, very informative demonstration on this asset management series and for showing us on how we can build a solution using or automate a process using Power Automate. I don't think you could have done or explain this any easier, and I would highly recommend, as you mentioned, some things that you would like the audience to do as their homework, to continue by taking on a cloud skill challenge that you will talk more about in after the slide. But for anyone who is getting started, for beginners, for anyone who wants to know more about the Power Automate, who if you want to know how you can get started and have a basic knowledge and a basic foundational kind of know all about the concepts and all the different kind of things you have there. Highly recommend this. Check out the first learning module you have, which is the aka.ms dash slash build an asset underscore one. This will tell you all about Power Automate and everything, basically its applications and all that stuff. If you would like to continue your learning and apply your learning on both Power Apps and Power Automate, then we have a challenge project, which is also part of our Learn module, which you can find on Microsoft Learn. This is the second link on screen, aka.ms slash build a booking challenge. So highly check that out. It will highly, it will kind of build on your skills and for your foundational knowledge, because it's not only about learning and seeing, it's about actually applying, so you can actually start getting more into the field and be more familiar with all these power platform resources and power platform tools and products that you have. So get yourself familiar. I would highly recommend for you to check those links out. Other than that, we have another cloud skills challenge that is actually set by Someleze specifically for this asset management series for you to continue your learning journey. And this, I think, from someone who is coming from a different background or someone who wants to actually, apply what Someleze kind of has talked to us through, I would highly recommend for you to check that Cloud Skills Challenge out. Someleze, maybe you can put the tab on that and maybe tell the audience about this Cloud Skill Challenge and all that stuff.
Yeah, definitely. So the Asset Manager series challenge is catered for this specific series that we are currently doing, so that you can have the basic knowledge around Power Apps and also Power Automate and how to build a solution like this. Obviously, when we were doing the series and we were doing the first sessions, I just walked you through a few of the basics of Power Apps, a few of the basics of Power Automate. You can also go through that in more detail using the Cloud Skills Challenge and one of the Learn modules, which Hadil had mentioned is actually part of this Cloud Skills Challenge that you can actually complete. So again, don't be alarmed by what you see here because I've done most of the Learn modules before. So you can complete it. It's about 7 modules within the Cloud Skills Challenge, and it will take you about 7 days. So you'd have to like completed by the end of next week before Christmas. Hopefully, you guys do that, and the specific Cloud Skills Challenge can actually help you better understand how to use all of the knowledge that you gained from us in more detail and how you can be able to build those projects using Power Automate and Power Apps or even Power BI, or you add more products of the Power Platform. Again, on the second link that Hadil actually mentioned earlier on, I just want to touch a little bit on it, which is Challenge Project, which is you can be able to build a booking request app with Power Apps and Power Automate. This is another scenario that is similar to the asset management series. How is it similar to it? It's similar on how you are setting up all of the different kinds of components within your solution, your front end, your back end, and your middleware. So it also uses approval requests. It gets into them in much more detail. So I'd like for you guys to have another project in your bag so that you can be able to share with us within social media or LinkedIn on how far you are within this progress. So just make sure you complete that project and complete the Cloud Skills Challenge. It's pretty much of a fun learning experience and learning journey that you're going to be exposed to. Right. So other than that, I'm pretty sure that we've reached to the end of our session, Hadil.
Yes. Yes, exactly. We have reached to the end of the session and this absolutely excellent series, which I personally have learned a lot from, coming from a data science background, someone who is all into, thank you for taking us into the world of low code and no code and showing us actually how easy it is to get started, for people who are maybe scared to use, the Power Platform, or you don't know how to get started. This is your best bet with the learning resources that you have with check out this previous episode if you have not yet for the asset management series. It's available on our Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel for you to check out, and highly kind of you can this, since this is a recorded live stream, you can always go back to what the demonstration, the steps, and everything you kind of maybe would like to go back on, and to help you complete the challenges that we have for you, the two challenges, which is the Cloud Skill Challenge and the other Booking Request App Challenge that we have. So thank you so much, Malaysia, for taking the time to do this series for us, for making it absolutely easy and effortless, and kind of showing us how to build connected solutions using Power Apps and Power Automate, and by kind of taking a scenario which is the asset management, which to leverage these absolutely wonderful services. Thank you so much again, for our community and for the audience and for everyone who is joining us. Thank you for joining us from all over the world. I've seen comments from Nigeria. We had people maybe from Dubai, and from all over the world. So thank you all so much for joining us and for staying, until this very last minute. Highly, check out the resources that we have for you, free learning resources, learning material for you to apply all your learning and to continue your journey. So Malaysia, thank you so much for being on the show with me. It's an absolute pleasure, and I look forward to having you and do more upcoming episodes together.
Thank you so much, Hadil. I'm definitely looking forward to it.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.